What's up everyone, Duquesne23 here, and today I'm going to be going over this little island environment that I was able to create in under 30 minutes for the Halo 5 racetrack tutorial. Now this will be a good way for people just to get my normal workflow whenever I create an environment, create some aesthetics, and so let's go ahead and get into this. So starting out, I just needed to make an actual track itself. So I just went ahead and spawned one of these 16 by 32 by 2 pieces and just kind of placed them around. It made an interesting looking shape that wasn't too complicated and fairly small. Now, although there is Z fighting on the actual track, I didn't worry about fixing that just yet until I got the terrain in place. Now, the next thing I did was actually get the tidal terrain hills and flats and just kind of threw them around in the center section, just placing them about. They don't have to be perfect. You can always cover up some of those imperfections with rocks and other objects like that. So I just kind of threw them around so I can have some sort of interesting hill that's right there in the center of the track. After lining up everything, I went ahead and decided on what type of rocks I wanted to do. At first, I wasn't sure if I wanted to do tidal or go with the alpine rocks or the Barrens desert rocks. But eventually I just came to with, keeping the tidal rocks just because I felt like it looked the best for the type of environment that I wanted to do. So once I figured out what type of rocks I wanted to do, I went ahead and started placing them out around the map, filling in the gaps, the holes, and making the actual location a little bit more believable. And so, you don't have terrain pieces just kind of floating in midair and sticking up and having those gaps. And then once I filled up the center section, I started bordering the actual track itself with more rocks and more things. Now, something to remember is to always rotate your rocks. Always don't just place them down the same way, the same direction every single time, because then it will look very uniform and you could see the different patterns of the rocks like just kind of flow next to each other. And so that's not really good to do because you don't want rocks to look the exact same in this one section of the track as the other section over there. So you want to kind of rotate them, flipping them around, trying to, merge them in with other rocks, just try to make it look a little bit different. So it's a little bit more believable of an environment and not just, the same piece placed multiple times. Now, after placing the rocks around the track, I started to mess with the background environment. Now, this is something I really like doing in my maps. Just even though this isn't a place where people play on and people interact with or anything like that, having some background rocks adds a little bit of depth to your map, and it just makes it a little bit more believable that you'll be playing on, because in real life there's other things that sometimes that are taller off in the distance and you can see them off in the distance. So this way I wanted to do something similar to that with this small map. And another thing I normally do whenever I place rocks and everything in the background is I also put a terrain piece on there and tilt it kind of majorly upwards so you can actually see the grass and the terrain whenever you're on the flat ground down below while you're racing or playing on the map with Slayer or just whatever like that. I tilt it quite a bit so you can see it, even though it may be a little bit unrealistic because not necessarily you always have a super steep section of terrain all the way around your maps, at least that that are in the background sections. But it just does make it look visually better a little bit where you could see some grass and terrain pieces and things. Now, this doesn't always happen, but I do this on some of my maps and on some sections of them. Now, after lining the entire track with rocks, I decided to go ahead and start placing the palm trees down. Now, I wanted to try to get a nice variety of palm trees. Didn't want to keep them with the same, palm tree just placed everywhere. I had the tall ones. I placed the, medium ones down and also that bent over tilted one. Placed those out around at different places and tried to make them a little bit believable, growing near each other. They're not always just perfectly spaced out. And just try to put them in nooks and crannies and some of the rocks and things like that all around the track itself. Now, after placing all the trees around the track that I wanted to place down, I went ahead and selected the entire track itself and turned on the grime on the track, since it is kind of like a beach type looking track, and of course the aesthetic of this little island. I wanted to put grime on there, like there's moss and things like that growing on there, just maybe some sand. It kind of looks like there's some dirt and stuff over the track itself, so it's not just perfectly clean. And I also went in and adjusted each one of the pieces to make sure that didn't have any of that flickering going on, and so I really adjusted every single piece with the that Z Fighter fixer. and just so that way it won't be showing all that flickering while you're on the map. Now after that, I went ahead and put in some more vegetation, from plants to bushes to the banana trees, and then I even loaded the entire map. Since it's very small, I put grass over the entire terrain pieces except for the background image. Since that's far away, it's not necessary with that, but all the hills on the center, I put grass over the entire thing, just to make it look a little bit more visually appealing, and it didn't really mess with frame rate since it is such a small map. It doesn't really affect because there's not a lot going on with this map itself. And not only did I put grass in the center section around the track itself, I actually put it up on the cliffs. I noticed whenever you place the grass on the rock pieces, it actually looks kind of like some vegetation is growing out of the rocks, which that does happen in certain spots, especially if it's more level nooks and crannies. And so I really just started putting out some vegetation over onto the rocks just to make it a little bit more appealing. And after I got done putting the rest of the bushes and the grass and everything out, I grabbed one of the trees and I went ahead and loaded those up on the rocks. Basically, this is a good way of providing a large bush, a large vegetation piece in the rocks, and it just adds a little something to the rocks so they aren't so bland and barren of just having any type of vegetation, because I love all the different vegetation options that you can have, and I really wanted to place them into the rocks and into different places, so it looks like things are a little bit overgrown in this lush environment. And then whenever I was done with that, I went ahead and changed the actual FXs like in everything so it can actually have the sunset look to it. And I kind of messed with a little bit of rain in there, but I didn't like the way it was going, so I went ahead and turned that off. And then I went in and put some fog in there, so it's kind of like a morning fog coming up with the sun rising on there, so or the sun setting, either one you want. But yeah, so I really enjoyed the way this turned out. The map will be live, and actually it does have checkpoints on it for race. So it's a very short miniature racetrack. So it only has 4 checkpoints on the actual map. So if you do want to race it, the download link will be in the description below, and it will actually just, I don't know, you just put a lot of checkpoints, put like 30 checkpoints or something on there, like 30 points to be able to finish the entire map. So that way you can go around it, 5 to 10 times or something like that. So you can actually get some, nice racing involved in there. And so it's pretty interesting doing these small little miniature Halo 5 racetracks, just because they will be chaotic and kind of fun. So, this was kind of fun to be able to do for the Halo 5 race tutorial. But I hope y'all enjoyed this video. If you did enjoy this video, be sure to give it a like, and also leave a comment down below on what maybe else you want me to make in the future. I can do another one of these short tracks, very short videos, making in about 30 minutes, these entire things. And so I am also streaming over on YouTube. The download link will be in the download link. The link to see my streams over on YouTube is going to be in the description below. Also, I have a Duquesne Live YouTube channel, and I will see y'all over there. Be sure to subscribe here for more custom maps from all sorts of games, including Halo. And I will see you on the next one. Remember, let's forge a new Halo.